Hey, it's Frank here with 4D Honeybee, and if I look a little disheveled, it's because I am. I'm just doing a quick video here, it might not be so quick actually, on the things I do to prepare my hives for winterization. Now, it's November 2nd, and I haven't put up a video in about 6 weeks because from October, pretty much from September to November, I'm just swamped with stuff to do that keeps me away from the bees. So I got kids going back to school, wife going back to work, I've got other stuff. I can't even remember what I've got going. But I got a lot of stuff going that takes me away from the hives. And then I had an emergency trip to Europe that I had to do for family issues. And that stole me one of my weekends that I thought was going to be an entire bee weekend. So I've got to get it done now because I'm going to be away for the next week as well. Do a lot of traveling in this 3-month period. And so this is what I got to do. I got to make some sugar candy to feed the hives. I'm going to do about 2.5 pounds of sugar per hive to start. I've got 6 hives going into the winter, and 2 are single brood boxes and 4 are double brood boxes. So I'm also going to wrap them. I'm going to put a mouse guard on them because mice invaded one of my hives last year, and I'm going to wedge I'm going to shim the top of the lids of the hive so that some air can get out there, so that you get a bit more circulation leaving the hive, wet, moist air leaving the hive. And then I'm going to put I'm going to add a brood box to the top, probably a medium or sometimes a large brood box, depending on what I got kicking around, and fill that up with pine shavings, so that the thought being hot, moist air from the bees comes up, it goes through the upper lid, it goes through the pine shavings, it hits the outer lid. That's where it condenses and some water comes back down, but it comes down and gets trapped in the pine shavings. And what I did last year is once every couple of weeks I'd go out and check the shavings. If they were really damp, I would pull them out, but the moisture never got through to the bottom of the pine shavings, so it never got back to the bees. And sometimes when I would check it and it was damp, I'd check it a couple days later and it would dry out. So and there was no mold issues, no moisture issues, so that worked really well for me this year. I'm not going to do an actual candy board. I'm just going to put the candy, the sugar on top of the inner lid and let them come up through there. So thanks for joining me. This will be probably my last video for a while, but I also want to do second year beekeeper video, what you should be prepared for in the second year, because there's a lot. And just like now, I'm ill prepared because there's a lot more things to do when you have 6 hives going into the winter as opposed to last year when I had 3 hives going into the winter. So thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something at 4D Honeybee. So Jackie is making the candy mixture for me. And first off, could you tell me what the mixture is of water to vinegar?
At the moment, I did 3 cups of water and 1 tablespoon of vinegar. My mixture so far is 6.6 pounds of sugar to 1/3 of that mixture, and I still feel it might be a bit wet.
So yeah, and what it boils down to is the final consistency that you end up with your sugar. So you want it basically to be not too wet and not too drippy. Like you want it like, I guess I can compare it to like packing snow for snowballs, if you happen to be in a northern climate like I am. So the downside is you're adding moisture to the hive. The upside is that the sugar actually will absorb some moisture as well, as long as you don't make it too slurry or sloppy. This is not too bad. If you look at it, it's easily holding an indentation, right? So that's a good sort of guide. You really can't go too wrong if you don't put enough water in it. Well, the worst thing you can do is put too much water in it, make it sloppy and wet, and then add too much moisture to the hive. So if you're going to err in one way, just err on the side that makes it a little less moist. But this is looking pretty good. It's going to work out all right. So the next thing I do is I put this this very thin screen on the bottom of the board here, on the bottom of a box. Now, I didn't do this last year. Last year I went with a thicker screen, and I actually meshed the candy right into the bottom of the board. So this is not a candy board. This is strictly to hold the pine shavings. From here I'll pour pine into the top and pretty much bring it up to the top level of the box here. Maybe, you know, maybe 4 or 5 inches worth of pine. shavings. They're very loose, which is fine. They'll start to pack in as the moisture gets in there. But this is just to keep the pine shavings away from the food. So the food is going to go in underneath here, in between here and the inner lid, which will be underneath here. And what I'll do too is I'll just put some sticks or some paint sticks, broken up paint sticks under here, just so that this doesn't come down and push down right against the bees or against the food. So that gives you your bee space for the bees to be able to walk in and get access to all the sugar they want. It worked really well last year. So here's a look at how I'm doing the upper box, which will not hold any bees. It certainly will hold a mixture of warm and cold air, mostly cold air, because I'm going to put this meshing in, this cloth. I'm going to staple it in here and then put wood chips on top of that. So that'll provide the insulation for heat. It'll also provide a method for the hot, moist air to come through. It'll then condense on the upper lid, and some of it will fall back into the pine chips there, which will then absorb it. And it doesn't get through. It doesn't get down to the bees. So this is what I'm using. You can use anything, right? People use cedar, which probably smells great. This is what I have readily at hand. It's this pet bedding stuff that you can buy at any hardware store probably. So let's put this cloth in now and keep it going. So that's it. Check it out. So you just want to try not to leave any pockets like this, big pockets where chips will fall in, because they'll end up on top of the bees, and that's a bit of a pain. I don't think it hurts them, but it's just better to do it. That's where the pine chips are going to sit, a couple more to build, and then I'll be ready to start doing the work at the hives. Okay, so now it's time to install the mouse guards, and these are the entrance blockers basically that I bought. You do not need to buy these. You could just use like a 1/2-inch galvanized mesh and staple that in. The way this works is you have these brackets, you screw them on either side of the box, and then in theory in the spring you can just remove them by lifting them away, right? And the brackets stay there. I don't know how well they're going to work, but I'm going to give it a try. Last year a family of mice moved in with one of my bee hives, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen again this year. Okay, so I'll show you one close-up of how the guards go on here, hopefully, because it's really, all these hives are not quite all standard sizes, so I do have my skepticism about how easy this is going to go, but you won't know until we know, right? I'll try to keep the noise down around the hives, but yeah, see what I mean? It's too long for this hive, so. Heck is that supposed to work? They're all too long, basically. Well, we could. Yeah. So here you go. Here's the problem, right? They're all too long. So I guess if I would have brought some tin snips, I could have sheared this so that it would work, but it's not going to work. So won't be able to do this now, won't be able to get back to it anytime soon, so let's see if I can figure out a decent solution here. Maybe a combination of the mouse guard and a hive reducer. Oh no, we don't want to put a hive reducer in there because they need all the ventilation they can get, so yeah. Looks like what we're probably going to have to do is just make another trip here with some tin snips to fix it. That's going to be the only way. All the while when we put the wraps on, we've got to keep in mind that the wraps are going to cover this area. So I'll put in a screw right here just so that the wraps don't fall right in there so that you can cover it. But that's a big problem because it's going to be a real pain in the butt to have to put those mouse reducers in after the wrap. So let's see if I can figure something out. Okay, so I'm going to try to record the complete wrapping of one hive. So I've removed the inner lid and I turned it upside down so that the vent is facing down, so that cold air will come in through the front of the hive, and or hot air, I guess, could make its way up. Basically, you just get the circulation in the front of the hive, cold or hot air, right? Which means they can stay away from that and use the rest of the hive as their nesting area. So here's the sugar candy we made. I also added about a capful of Honeybee Healthy into it. You can see it just on the top there, just to kind of enhance their desire to feed, in case being starving in the winter isn't enough of a desire for them to feed. But all I'm going to do is just spread it along this inner lid here, fairly close to the entrance, without leaving it too high, without leaving it piled up too high. And the reason why I'm doing that is just because wax out of there. Just because so they have bee space to be able to get in there, right, and get at the sugar without being too far away from the entrance. So that's looking pretty good. They'll come up and get that for sure. And now I will slide the cover on. These covers are from Bee Cozy, and they're certainly not paying me to do this, but they worked out really well for me last year. They're durable. They provide you the darkness that you need to increase heat retention in the hive, and it's insulated, so it also prevents drafts, obviously, because it's one solid piece of plastic. So they go on pretty smoothly as I say that. Hopefully that's the way they work. And you just need to make sure that at the bottom of the hive, you'll see I put a 3-inch screw there just to prevent the cozy from sliding all the way down and blocking their entrance. Alright, that's about really the only thing you have to worry about. I will put another one at the top so that they can get into their upper entrance as well, but that's about it. They say this is supposed to act as a chimney to move air up and down the front of the hive. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's what they say anyway. So, on top of this now, I go with my screen bottom. And then pour in the wood chips on top of that, and that's it. And one thing I will do as well is I'll just put a couple of little sticks in underneath the mesh here, so that in case the weight of the wood chips or the water that's going to end up coming down, in case it pushes the screening down onto the bees and the sugar, that gives them their bee space to be able to get at the sugar, no problems. So this is what it looks like inside. You can see they're just about starting to make their way up to the sugar already. Check it out. See that? That should be good enough. Now we pour our wood chips in here, and it's done. So I just want to introduce you to Brad and Sebastian, who are somewhat locals, and they're coming in to scout the land out. So we're just in the final stages of the first winterization of the first hive here, and all that's left is just a couple of shims that I'm going to put here on the front ends, just to keep the front of the lid elevated just that little bit, so that we get a little bit more air flowing through it, and that's it. And this is what we do. We just grab a couple of these pieces of Coroplast, put it right on top, staple it on so it won't go anywhere, and then this one hive is done.
Beauty. And you get to do that with all
Yeah, all
five
five.
of them here.
And the one at home. And
So
pray to God they make it.
We missed this portion of the show, but they're in here, nice and safe and snug.
Yeah, they're all in there. I took off the lids to get at them, and what happens is they're not very happy to be molested at this time. That's why I'm all suited up. But,
Sure.
But they weren't bad at all. So that's it. Stick the lid back on, and that's it. That's your winterization. I'll get the rest of the hives done, and I'll do the hive at home as well, and then I'll have to do something about these mouse guards that didn't work out. And thanks for joining me at 40 Honeybee. So just one last thing that I wanted to point out is don't forget to add this screw here. So I put this 3-inch screw in there just to make sure they have access to their upper entrance. I think in the end, that's why the one hive that last year that got invaded by mice ended up surviving, because they just used that upper entrance. But and you just want it there to be able to have a good circulation. So you got the screw at the bottom, keeping their whole entrance open. You got the screw at the top, keeping the upper entrance open. And that's it. That's a winterized hive. From here on in, I'll check them once a month and add more sugar as they need it, and hope that they make it. So this is what the apiary looks like all winterized. I was unable to put the mouse guards on it, which is unfortunate because there are mice here and they will find their way in. So maybe next week I'll find a way to do that. And all the bees were looking really good. Nice, thorough, big clusters in there. And we start to see the mortality happening now at the front of the hives, which you got to get used to. You'll see every week, you'll see hundreds of dead bees, not only at the front of the hive, but on the lids, on the ground, in the snow, all over. So that's why you just need a lot of bees going into winter and resources for the bees to survive.